Welcome back to Sika Strength and welcome back to the Sika Stand news show. Today's news show is brought to you by our weightlifting camp and our strength and conditioning camp in Portugal, the south of Portugal. The 27th to the 31st is the weightlifting camp, 5 days of training, 2 sessions per day, a lecture every day. The location is beautiful. 3 days for the Friday, Saturday and Sunday beforehand for the strength and conditioning camp, 2 sessions per day, a lecture every day. It's a lovely location. Accommodation is reasonable, food is cheap, the location is amazing, it's down by the ocean and it's just a great experience. We ran a camp there last year, everybody loved it, so we're coming back again this year. So email sikastrength@gmail.com. Now first up we've got Kate Vibert, who jerked 160 kilos from rack, so always very, very good at rack jerks, but this 160 kilos is something else. Massive PB. And maybe don't counter out just yet.
Yeah, this is so good. Obviously, We talked last week about her back squats and her numbers climbing up all the time. But I feel like this is a major step forward. I'm not sure what her previous PB is, but definitely 160 is an absolutely huge PR.
So there's been some interviews with Kate and talking about kind of the process and how she's feeling now with Olivia Reeves, and she seems to be in a pretty good place. She doesn't seem to be beating herself up too much about it. You know, she's already made Olympics and she is already achieved some massive things in weightlifting, but she's obviously still training pretty hard. And she's a very, very young lifter. I think she's only 23 years old, maybe 24. So if she wanted to, she has years left of progression if needed. So this 160, I imagine it's like a 5 kilo PB. But what's very impressive about this is how stable overhead she is. So when she hits that split jerk position, you know, a lot of times all of us have hit a split jerk PB from the rack and it's been loosey-goosey. There's been a lot of celebration overhead.
Yeah.
But she's nailing this, absolutely sticking the split jerk.
I think it brings up another interesting point as well of when you have competitors below you or slightly above you and that kind of real hard push to keep yourself going, you know. Kate has been at the top level of international weightlifting now for a number of years. Obviously, as Gareth said, a previous Olympian. But when you get somebody else into the mix and then suddenly your spot starts looking like it might be in jeopardy, there's nothing like that to start pushing you on.
Yeah, and I know some people might be thinking, they're like, oh, I am the Storm brother, I'd make a go of it. But if you've already achieved something as difficult as getting the Olympics, and then, you know, you're looking at a sport like weightlifting where the support in America is good. You know, she's able to make a career as an athlete, which is a lot more than some countries. It's not the best country. It's not the best support, maybe like China or Qatar or South Korea, but she is still getting funding as an athlete. So it's hard to say, okay, can I commit another couple of years to this or keep my life as an athlete, or can I develop my life after and stuff, you know? So it is, lives are tricky situations, as you well know. We're all living one, so it is best not to judge, but I'm rooting for her. I'd love to see her do well. Both of them are very, very good lifters. So why can't they all go?
Yeah, that's the terrible thing about this Olympics is there's so few spots for weightlifting.
Yeah.
My other question is, if you go to your second Olympics, do you get a second lot of Olympic rings tattoos?
I think one is enough.
I'd nearly go like 2012 and then whatever 2016 afterwards, you know.
I'd start filling in the rings with the years if you're able to get that many. Next up, we've got the Lee Sang section of the news show, formerly known as the Archim Anthropov section of the news show. And Lee Sang Yong, bit of a story to weave today. So as you know, or if you've been watching it, Lee is moving up to the 73 kilo class for the Olympic category. The hour is late, the hands are close to midnight, and Lee left it pretty late. But we're here, he's gaining that weight, and now this session, we have a missing 155 from blocks, which is 3 kilos over. He's just masonry PB snatched from the floor. Then he moves on, misses 155 a few times. Move on to the clean and jerk on Wednesday. He misses 193 several times. Come back on Friday, misses 192 several times, then makes 194.
This is a saga.
Yeah.
It's all going on here. In Korea, they have a kind of saying about their big Friday sessions, and it's Fridays on fire, or whatever that translated to Korean is. But it's a big thing. Everybody kind of understands that everybody's maxing out. So I wonder, on Wednesday afternoon, was there a little bit less hype, a little bit less kind of direct drive for that training session? And so then that making that lift isn't quite so important or isn't quite so vital to the success of the week. Then you come on to Friday, and Friday becoming more serious. Everybody else around you is maxing out concurrently. I wonder, was that part of why he was able to make those lifts?
So here's the 194 successful attempt from the back, and you'll see the big problem Lee has in that split jerk is that front knee goes really far over the toes. And you know, I know sometimes people watch these videos, very small percentage, and they're like, "Yeah, you don't have technical flaws," or that's how I read the comments. But most people realize that elite lifters also have technical issues, and Lee misses that because his front foot takes a lot more of the weight. He's pushed really far forward, and then when the successful 94, and you can see from the back angle that knee is further back over the toe, and it's such a small difference in balance, but it makes a huge difference for him as a lifter when he's trying to balance this huge weight overhead. So like when he makes that 194, he's really nailing it.
Yeah, it's that ratio of the weight's influence over him because his body weight is so light as well. Any of those technical flaws are massively magnified. It would be really unfortunate, Garth, if you did speak like that and you didn't have any wrong views or wrong comments or anything, but that's just how you spoke.
No, that would be unfair. And if that is the case, I'm very sorry, but that's how I read them. Here we also have him back squatting 210 kilos for 13. So not only is he attempting block snatch PBs, snatch from the floor PBs, clean and jerk PBs, and making them, all of them, he's also still doing his very high rep, high volume back squats, his AMRAP back squats. This is 210 kilos for 13. These all seems to be happening around the same weeks. So you would have to imagine his clean and jerk and snatch are going to freshen up even more once he gets beyond this super high volume phase of squatting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Most of the time we see weightlifters peaking for competition. Obviously, he's only a few weeks out from that competition in Thailand. Mm-hmm. But as we see them peaking, usually they peak their squats concurrently. And that's how most nations will do it. It's how most coaching staffs will do it. Their squat might peak kind of a week or two out from competition, as in you're going from this kind of high volume work into your lower volume work, much fewer sets and for a much higher weight. So it's not necessarily that you're going to max your back squat the same day you're maxing your snatch and clean and jerk. That's not necessarily what we're talking about. It's more just going towards those higher intensity squat sets in the weeks leading up to the competition. Obviously, in this case, it could be a kind of look to the future or a longer term plan that Lee is keeping the high volume work in there in preparation for the Olympics. Also, as he's going up in body weight, those high volume squats will be beneficial for gaining muscle tissue. But it is just it's a noteworthy point. He's keeping that squat volume so high.
Volume doesn't lead to muscle mass. So one of the really interesting things probably are the two things working for him there is that Lee always trains super high volume, multiple sessions all year round, just so much work capacity. So that's probably one of the reasons he can deal with this. And the other then, of course, is with the view of, okay, getting to Thailand is one thing, but then you obviously have the Olympics in Paris after that to still make. So he's like, okay, I've got to do well in Thailand, so I'm going to push the lifts. And then I've got to do well in Paris, so I've got to kind of peak that squat for the biggest performance possibly of his career. So he needs that 280 plus. The sooner he has that squat, the more use he can make of it and the less emphasis he can put on his squats, and then he can move on with that lifting. So he is he's up shit creek, and he fortunately has lots of paddles though. Lee has
lots of paddles.
Lee has the paddles.
Lee is a paddle.
Lee paddle. So here we've got a video sent in to us by one of our viewers, so thank you very much. This is, as you know, Meso Hassana from Qatar, and he's in Thailand currently on a training camp, and one of the members of the gym sent us this 210 kilo clean and jerk of Meso in his preparation for the kind of qualifiers for the Olympics. Although Meso is very, very safe, he does like to show up and train hard and show up at competitions. He's a very good comp lifter most of the time, so I assume he doesn't want to be left out. So this 210, very routine for him.
Yeah, what I really like about Meso is Meso has the competitions. You can see when he's going to compete. Every time he shows up to competition, he does a great job of competing. There's none of this kind of tactical gameplay going on that we've seen the last 2 years with Olympic qualifiers, with people trying to show up to meets, just weigh in or not lift, or show up to meets and have an injury in the training hall or something along those lines. None of that crack out of Meso. Meso shows up, does his lifts. We get to see what he's like, get to see where he's at in his training. And this 210 is exemplary of Meso's lovely clean, I think.
Now, next up, we've got Olivia Reeves. So, obviously, one of America's greatest lifters currently, and probably will be ever if she keeps progressing incredibly well. So, she put up this 121 kilo power clean and full depth squat jerk in her story. Again, one of the members got this and sent it in to us, or sorry, one of the viewers. So, thank you so much. And this is a display of dominance over 121 that is very impressive.
There's a couple of things that really stand out for me on this, right? First thing is how sharp that power clean is. Mm-hmm. No over pulling at the top. Super vertical at the top of her extension. This isn't a power clean where she's ripping on the bar, really make it kind of like that kind of football style of power clean. Or you'll commonly see weightlifters doing it where they're being auto-regulated by using the power clean, and they'll change their technique or alter their pulling style because of that, just to get up to those higher weights. There's none of that going on here. This is technically perfect. The only thing that differentiates this from her standard clean is, of course, the catch height. So it's very, very good on the clean. And the second thing is how easily she catches that squat jerk. That's an incredible level of skill when she's not a squat jerking weightlifter.
Have you ever maxed your squat jerk?
No. Have you?
It was either 160 or maybe 65. I can't remember.
You had a little period as a power jerker, didn't you?
Yeah, but that was like the second year of weightlifting. We all make the same mistakes. So next up, we've got some footage. Vintage Weightlifting, or Vintage Lifts Instagram, so you may know him and seen him on Instagram, sent us this footage the other week of Ilya when he's 15 years old, power snatching 140. Now, Vintage said this was from a YouTube, I think a Kazakh YouTuber, uploading some footage. Ilya, if you watched that interview with him on Hook Rip a couple of years ago, talked about clean and jerking, I think it was 227 kilos as an overweight 85 when he was 16. So 227 kilos, maybe it was 225, it was in the 220s. So he was weighing like 92 kilos or something when he was 16. Then he went to that 2005 World Championships as an 85 and did that 216 or 217. So Ilya was hitting them weights early.
My God, yeah. There's a few funny things about this. Firstly, Ilya looks almost gangly. He looks like his arms are really long and his legs are really long, which you would never say about him when he's kind of more of an adult lifter and he's better filled out. He does just look a little bit spindly here. I
hate those jokes where they're like 15 going on 55, but Ilya doesn't look 15 in this.
Yeah.
I assume it's the footage is correct. But that 140 power snatch with 15 is no joke.
The second thing I love about this is his technique really doesn't change at all from the age he's 15.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for having expert coaching from the age of 8. That really is, it's hard to...
It's really a small bit advantageous.
Yeah, it does give you some advantages to have expert coaching. Next up, we've got another South Korean lifter, Jong Beom. The Irish inflection on that probably isn't correct, but this is one of the lifters we saw in South Korea last year near there. I hadn't heard of him before, but he was one of the most beautiful lifters. He was one of the lifters when we were watching the men's team training, the women's team training, that just jumped out immediately when I was watching him lift. I was like, who the fuck is that? This he's lifting incredible. He's a 96 kilo lifter, and he did the mythical 180 220, the 400 kilo total, which is astronomical.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. When you talk about seeing him training, it's funny, at such light weights, that technical prowess is so obvious. Like, you see him snatching 70 kilos and you immediately say, this is vastly different from everybody else. And it's not that everybody else there has poor technique, absolutely not, by no means, but he is definitely a kind of step above many of the other teammates in terms of just how technically good his lifting is. The 180 220 is the GOAT number, GOAT status.
I assume he's moving up to 102 for the Olympics, obviously, as the 96 is not an Olympic category. So the 102 is the most feasible option for him to grow into a class. It's interesting how they've kind of left it a little bit later instead of moving up earlier. But this 180 and here's the 220 clean and jerk. So both of these were 5 kilo PBs. 5 kilo PBs don't come around a lot when you're doing 175, 215, so...
Definitely not one on each lift in the same week.
Yeah, that's crazy. Very, very good lifter. And just super precise in his training. All his lifts are really sharp, and the South Korean technical model is very, very impressive, and it's very consistent across the lifters. There's a real distinct pathway there for them, and there's a really distinct kind of cohesive plan everyone seems to be singing from, except for Lee Sang.
Yes.
Except for Lee.
Yeah. He's definitely divergent.
Next up, we've got everyone's favourite up-and-coming Pan YunHua, who squatted 280 kilos. So Pan is 17 or 18 currently. Not sure of his age right now, but he is still a teenager, and he is somewhere around the 89 kilo mark. So this 280 as a teenager, very, 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 very impressive. So we don't do that 270 when he was 16, and here this 280 is just...
Yeah, it's so good. The standout thing for this for this lift for me is to do with the bottom position and his kind of turning around. So when we're hitting the bottom of a squat, when we're hitting the bottom of a dip and drive, whatever it is, anytime we're utilizing that stretch shortening cycle, you basically want to be bringing in as much energy as you can and then taking out as much energy as you can. So what we mean by that is on the way down, you want to be descending with purpose, and then you want to be not losing position or not bleeding any of that torque or power by losing position in the bottom. In this case, you see as he hits the bottom of that squat, he's hitting the bottom of the squat with good pace and good speed going into it. So he's able to load up those muscle tendon units. And then there is zero change in position. So it literally looks like you just stop the video and turn it around and reverse it, because it is exactly the same on the way back up. It's a very, very hard stop at the bottom. It literally looks like his hips hit a concrete pad. There's none of this kind of soft sinking into the bottom. It's a very, very good turnaround.
The joke is he's Tian Tao's baby brother, but he kind of actually, the squat does look like it. So then also we have this 210 kilo power jerk, so very close to being below parallel, but it's still a power jerk. So a very deep power jerk, 210 kilos from the rack, and he catches it higher, but he gets pushed down a little bit, but some great hip mobility available to him there. And very interesting to see the numbers he's putting up. So could be a big future star for China, but it will remain to be seen. Now back again to South Korea, we have one of the lighter lifters. He is super technician. We don't know what his name is, or at least I don't know what his name is, because if you Google translate his name, it just gives you the name of a particular herb. So I assume there's some kind of joke, but I must find out what his name is. So we've got a 130 kilo block snatch double here. Very, 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 very sharp, very nice, super precise positions. And we also have a 170 kilo clean and jerk from him.
Very speed.
Yeah, very speed. He is a superb lifter and really just nailing those lifts and those positions. Very dedicated start position, his dynamic start, everything is so precisely taught through. You know, every position is worked through in the snatch and that clean, which is so important.
A really impressive thing that South Korea have done is they have lifters across all weight classes at the very highest level. They don't seem to have any major gaps in their kind of rosters across male, female, youth and senior lifters. They're really developing like an entire team.
Their super heavies are probably the only thing that is lacking a little bit in terms of like the elite level. So they have some very good supers, obviously kind of working in like the 190s and 240s ish in training lifts, but not quite into the 200s or maybe the 250s like they would need to be for the elite level or the medal contention. But they have obviously, like Dara said, a lot of lifters across all of those ranges. Next, we've got coming in from Iceland, we've got, look, we'll try our best to say names, but if you get annoyed, just stop watching. Eyglo Fandal, she is a Icelandic lifter, and she hit this 108 kilo PB snatch. Really tidy, super clean rep, very, very smooth. That's how you want to make PBs.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that gives you the confidence that you're going to be able to hit that weight again. It's not like, oh, thank God I made that, I might never make that again. That's super, super sharp. Iceland obviously have developed a serious amount of female weightlifting talent in the last 10 years. I'm not quite sure where it comes from. Obviously, they talk about the kind of genetic pool in Iceland being incredibly strong, and it definitely seems to be incredibly strong in terms of female strength and power sports. It's so interesting. But there's a couple of other things here that I feel are really interesting. Iceland has an incredibly small population, yet they produce top end athletes for CrossFit and weightlifting pretty consistently, particularly on the female side. And I think that is a kind of general culture thing. We were just talking about Team Korea there and them having a very, very cohesive system. By no means do I think there's the same caliber or level of system present in Iceland currently, but you certainly have a couple of gyms that have incredibly strong teams there, and the influence of those coaches and athletes on others and those coaches and athletes on younger athletes is not to be sniffed at.
No, lots of gyms as well, a lot of good gyms. Obviously, the CrossFit, a lot of the famous CrossFit female athletes have probably a huge amount to do with that in terms of development of those gyms, and the inspiration for people to lift. There's several of those games winners, so it's very, very good for the culture, and especially in a country as small as that, to have those athletes winning a legitimate sport is, of course, great for that particular sport. Now, we've got a little glimpse at Team China here from the Mass Strength Instagram page. We've got Giga Chad, Tian Tao doing some lifts. We've got Li Dayin, we've got Li Wenwen, we've got Ho Zihu, the 49 kilo lifter, Li Faben, and several others. This is about a week ago, so they're a couple of weeks out. Thailand is in like 2.5 weeks, so this is the last chance hurrah for everyone, basically. So some people are sitting pretty across all teams. They've made the Olympics and it's really unlikely their spot is gone. And then other people are obviously fighting to get into a spot or hold their last bit of spot. We've Shi here doing some sit-ups, so no real indication of anyone's shape, no indication of who's going to get sent after Thailand. So Thailand is going to be an absolute whopper of a competition. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I feel the intra-team competition in Team China at the moment is pretty much as high as any team has ever been in weightlifting. This is interesting. This is like a little sizzle reel. It gives you a brief view at people, get to see their face, but you don't really get to see what numbers are going on. You don't really get to see any full lifts.
I'm sure that was intentional. No one's really got as much intra competition going on like Team China. South Korea are very, very high. Obviously USA are pretty high as well, although we had Maddie Rogers pull out. So most countries kind of have their lifters. There's not many countries where there's so many unknowns of who might get sent in regards. I think South Korea and China are probably two of the biggest ones where there's just so many athletes who could get sent that it's a lot of pressure. I wouldn't, on one hand, I'd love to be training there as one of those athletes, but on the other hand, that pressure is, you've got not career-ending decisions, but unlikely to get another chance decision if you don't make those lifts go well.
Yeah, and whatever about being an athlete, I certainly wouldn't want to be a team manager or a head coach.
No, that'd be great.
No, I think in terms of making those decisions, because at the end of the day, the athlete can just train as hard as they possibly can and do what they can at those competitions. Whereas it's not up to them. That conversation happens without them present,
Yeah.
And it's a big mess up if you don't bring someone like Tian Tao and then you don't come home with the medals you thought you should have.
Yeah, but they'd obviously have a lot of knowledge as well of the lifting going on. So here we just have a quick clip of Li Dayin doing 265 kilo snatch grip deadlift, the super heavy pulls. So we're probably actually going to do a bit of a longer video in regards to the heavy pulls. And one or two people mentioned about, does not the same logic apply to heavy squats? The answer is yes, and we've mentioned that before. We had a force velocity curve video on weightlifting like 2 years ago, and it's a very interesting topic, and there's a lot of nuance to it. And we're obviously big proponents of heavy strength training for athletes. It's Sika strength for a reason, so there's obviously goes without saying, but there is a bit more nuance in it than just pulls are good. What kind of pulls, how heavy you go into pulls, how frequently you're doing those pulls, and how often you're doing those heavy pulls. So there's a lot to it, but 265 snatch grip deadlifts, regardless of its context, is very impressive for an 89 kilo lifter to be moving like that.
Yeah, and he's not crazy pull out of position with it either.
No, it looks very similar to his positions that he would hit in the snatch.
Yeah.
Here we've got an unknown Chinese lifter. This is from ZKC Sports Instagram, who looks to be power jerking at least 200, but it could be 210 kilos. We can't quite see with the plates. Such a nice power jerk. We never get to see the mystery lifter's face, so if anyone knows who the mystery lifter is, I would be liking to know. But this 210, so solid, great positions, just absolutely nailing it. And it does seem to be somewhere around 210 kilos, and it is really powerful power jerk, really precise.
Speaking about in-team competition,
Yeah.
we have a lifter here who's probably not on the international team doing those kind of weights with that kind of precision. It says a lot about China's weightlifting setup currently.
Yeah, he's getting under that barbell so fast as well. He's just teleporting down into the bottom. So,
What can you even say at this point?
what do you say about that? Here we've got a Venezuelan lifter, Ann-Yelin Venegas, and she's power clean 110 kilos from blocks, and it is a sweet power clean, so precise.
It's so fast. Like there's two common errors that come along with block cleans, particularly block cleans from above the knee, and with power cleans in kind of female athletes, and that's massively over pulling the bar, leaning back at the top, staying in that extended position for too long. In this case, Annalyn pulls under that bar so quickly. There's no wasted time at the top at all. There is a real focus on pulling under fast. And that's the advantage of doing something like a power clean from blocks versus that full clean from blocks. It means if you do stay in that overly extended position for too long, you don't pull under the barbell quick enough, and it does kind of force you to get into that catch position far faster.
Now, back to South Korea again. We've got Yu Dan-ju, and he is one of the 89 kilo lifters, and this is a 210 kilo clean and jerk from him, so we don't know what shape his snatch is in right now, but this 210 is looking pretty confident. It needs to be a little bit more for medical contention if he has that snatch to go with it, but this doesn't look maximal for sure.
No, there's a couple of things here where you think there's a bit more to go. Firstly, a big jump back. That you don't commonly see. Certainly when I've seen his lifting before, I didn't see it that pronounced. But the jerk here looks very easy. Looks very, like, this kind of looks like 90% kind of territory. Very nice jerk.
Different kind of technique to the rest of the South Korean team in terms of the clean as well. So it is interesting. Now, he is putting up those heavy weights, so in the 89 kilo category, so whatever he's doing is working. So it'll be interesting to see what he hits as well, assuming he's going to Thailand. Obviously, the larger team can be sent to the international competitions, but then the final straw or the last pick comes down to the very few lifters or the athletes, and everyone is training very hard.
He's also wearing a t-shirt that you typically only see badminton players wearing.
Which, is not a cool sport. I think we can all agree badminton is not cool.
That's true.
So here we've got Chad Wesley Smith talking about how he's ranked sports among a variety of different attributes. So stuff like endurance, agility, power, multiple different things like that. Now, it seems like he ranked them subjectively based on his own interpretation of those sports from 1 to 10, then ranked them across that list, then got a matrix together, and then he listed these sports. And he's upset a lot of different people. Top of the list was MMA, and second was rugby. Weightlifting was in the middle. Lots of people who do certain sports are like, oh man, I can't believe you thought the swimming wasn't the top sport, or gymnastics not the top sport. And
somebody's like, why is it motorsports in there?
so people are disagreeing with him based on their subjective interpretation based on their sport. Now, what he don't seem to see is weightlifting. No one's defending weightlifting. It's in the middle. Weightlifting are probably too sad and sore to have time to actually defend weightlifting and say it should be more difficult. But it's a lot of people, and I'm mostly just putting this interested to see what your thoughts are in regards to this, because it's an interesting mental exercise, I suppose, for Chad to do. And the problem is, if he's just subjectively ranking each of those attributes based on his interpretation, it's not really a meaningful lift, and I suppose people take it a bit too hard, and it's kind of doing, I suppose, what Chad wanted to was get a conversation going, or rather people shouting at him.
That's what I wanted to say here.
Yeah.
I think Chad made this video and made this list knowing full well how many people would comment. It's an interesting thing when you talk about difficulty of a sport, particularly when you have so many different sports of so many different kind of genres here, right? So even if you look at some of the top sports there, MMA and rugby, obviously you have someone like Volkanovski who's played professional rugby and played and competed professionally in MMA, but those two worlds don't commonly interact because usually the MMA athletes are individual athletes and will be far better in individual sports, and rugby players won't really thrive in individual sports. There are so many different aspects to this that I think it's impossible to rank sports or even have an anyway decent compilation of lifts here. There's certain people will thrive in sports where the risk is incredibly high. So motorsports, if you want to call that a sport, those people won't do well in a sport such as golf, or a sport where the concentration levels are equally high. The risk is equally high, but you don't actually have any adrenaline drive. You don't have anything. Maybe if you're overly focused on one aspect for too long, you will lose concentration in that area. I think this is an impossible exercise to do. I definitely think you can rank sports in terms of the level of skill you'd have to have, or the amount of time it would take to acquire the skills required for those sports. I definitely think you could rank sports in terms of how physically painful those sports are to do. You could rank sports in terms of how many days per year you lose to injury. There are loads of metrics by which you can rank them, but in terms of having a toughness rating, I think that's pretty much impossible to do. And I think Chad knew that, and he knew a lot of people would grab onto this with both hands.
Yeah, like everyone's just going, oh, my sport should be difficult, and maybe the thought process there is that all sports are difficult if you do them at the highest level, and they're all very demanding if you're trying to push them to the absolute limit. Like weightlifting has one of the easiest competition sports of all sports. Like if you look at like maybe rugby there, for example, training is very difficult and the matches are super difficult. Marathon running, really difficult training, and then the event itself is super difficult. Weightlifting, training, very, very difficult. No one's denying that. But competition day is just 6 lifts. As little warm-up as you need to do, the bare minimum warm-up, then you go to your lifts. Not that demanding. They're sub-maximal lifts in 1 or 2 attempts at a supra-maximal lift. Sometimes not even that case. And then you just kind of finish. You just do 6 lifts. Like you don't even use that many resources. It's obviously a big adrenaline dump and stuff like that. But, weightlifting wouldn't be that difficult in terms of the sporting context. Obviously, you're predated on how well your training block went and stuff like that. And that's how well the competition will go and your mental aspect and stuff. But, comparing it is... all sports are difficult. If you try to push anything to the absolute limit, except for badminton, it's going to be a very difficult endeavour.
The badminton hate this week is just not on.
You know what? It's deserved. No one cool plays badminton.
That's not true. So,
NCAA track and field Instagram put up this kind of little news shortlet or little reel on a guy called Roje Stona, and he got silver in the NCAA in shot put indoor championships. Then a couple of days later went to try out for the NFL for the Arkansas on their pro day. Never played football before. He's 6'6" and is 270 pounds, so that's 122 kilos. And he did all of the drills. He ran a 40-yard dash in 4.69, and there's a different angle here of the 40-yard dash in a second, but this is just a little compilation of all the different activities he was doing on the day, on the sports day.
Sports day.
Sports ball. And Jesus, jeepers creepers.
Like, this brings up, I think this actually ties in really nicely with Chad's list in the previous thing. So you look at a sport like NFL where the athletes are some of the freakiest athletes in the world. It's very, very fair to say that. They're a massive pool of incredibly talented athletes who get paid a lot, so it draws in the best people, right? But then you look at that sport and you say somebody transferring over from a different sport happens quite regularly. In this case, someone who's never played football before goes to a pro day and catches some attention from some scouts, and it just shows the different levels of what you expect from athleticism versus what you expect from skill or the specific skill to play that sport. If you had that person going to a professional soccer club and he had never played soccer before, they'd probably think he was there, I don't know, as a physiotherapist or something. There's absolutely no way you'd be able to ever even have a conversation like that they would play professional soccer. Whereas in this case, it just shows American football, you need to be an absolute freak. You need to be incredibly athletically talented, but maybe the skill level just isn't the same.
But I would say it probably varies a lot based on position in American football. Yeah. So obviously specific people have very different skill demands, So you've got your unidirectional job to do. You've got your crazy attributes, and then you do what needs to be done, So it's crazy impressive. The 6'7", a 270. Just before anyone gets really mad at Darren thinking he's saying that NFL isn't a skilled sport, obviously based on just what Chad was saying there, but it is very interesting. Like, a lot of people say, oh, if American weightlifting would be unbelievable if all the best athletes from NFL went to weightlifting, but you just don't know if that's the case. For example, we've never seen a 6'7" athlete in weightlifting doing very well at weightlifting. You know, we don't see it being that common. Now, possibly, could they be very good? Could it make it work? Probably, but could you be the best ever? And if you're to look at, you know, some of the best ever weightlifters in the 80s and 90s, they don't look very, very similar to the roster of NFL. If you look at the combine the last few weeks or the pro days or whatever, you're not seeing similar body shapes to them, you know. But that doesn't mean it couldn't happen. A lot of different shapes do seem to work at times for weightlifting, but it is very, very impressive athletic feat and crazy impressive to be so well rounded.
I feel like as well that's the ultimate sign that you're an impressive athlete is you do very well in your own sport. And then you just transfer over to another sport and all the coaches are like, oh, who are you?
Yeah.
This looks amazing.
I pick him.
Yeah.
So next we've got not quite as fast, but still crazy impressive. This 66-year-old man is gunning it across the pitch. So this was put up by Strong by Science. He literally just saw him running, just absolutely gunning it across the pitch. And he just said he went down and chatted and was like, can I video basically one of your sprints? That this is so impressive is because obviously 60-plus-year-old man running this fast is very, very impressive, but also the maintenance of his speed. So he stays fast for that really long. That looks like at least 60 meters, maybe longer, maybe 100 meters. Probably actually about 100 meters, I'd say, from one end to the other, if not more. And he is just gunning it and staying fast as well at 66 years old.
Yeah, it looks like an indoor soccer pitch, which is 100 meters. And he's at the opposition box here. And he's still going at kind of max pace. You know, he doesn't look to have any degradation or slowing down or anything like that. This reminds me of a PE teacher we had in school who used to do the show of force, you know. Like he'd go in as people are warming up for their sprints in first year in secondary school. He'd go in for a sprint against them and show them who's boss. Until he tries to play against somebody in badminton, you know.
So the interesting thing about this is that he wasn't a former sprinter, so he's not like some former world record holder in the 50s or something or whatever. He's just someone who took up some sprinting later in life, from what he was saying to Strong by Science, and now he's just gunning it across the football pitches or soccer pitches, and so impressive. I could not put this in when just looking at it.
I'd love to know what that's like if you've never done something before, you know, if you've never tried to run really fast or done any sprint training or anything. And then suddenly you do it, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're actually really good at this."
You wonder what it's like to be good at something, is it?
I'd love to know what it'd feel like to have some talent.
Oh my god! Keep it off the new show, there. Keep your feelings to yourself. So next up, we've got this track strength. Who's Matt Clark? So Matt is part of the growing body of hybrid athletes. People get kind of annoyed by the hybrid athlete name, but I think it's fair. I think it's a fair name, Dara being one of those hybrid athletes. So this particular challenge he was doing is a 500-pound deadlift, which is 227 kilos, a 400-pound squat, which is 180-ish kilo squat. He did 405, so 182 and a half. 300-pound bench press, which is 137 kilo bench press. And then he wanted to run a sub 2 minute 800 meters, but he ended up doing a 205 800 meters, all within the same hour.
This is insanely impressive.
Unfortunately for me, the 800 kind of means nothing in some ways, like as in relative to what this hybrid athlete should be, like what's impressive for this hybrid athlete, you know, because like if the concept of your 5 minute mile 500-pound squat, that 5 minute mile obviously is incredibly impressive with that, you know, but obviously the 800 meter times, if you unfairly look at the best 800 meters, you're like, oh, it's not that fast. But that's the whole point of the hybrid thing, though, is putting in context. And I think that's the biggest problem with hybrid athletes, is that you have to really, really understand all of the feats to be impressed by them, and then you're sufficiently impressed. But when you look at these individually, there's people who will look at them and be like, 500-pound deadlift, I can do that, or whatever.
Like some context on the 800 meters. 5 minute mile pace is a 3:04, 3:07, 400 meters. So, 3:07 kilometer. So he's trucking there. Like he's way, way under 5 minute mile pace, obviously for half of the distance. But he's I think that's like 4:10 or 4:12 minute mile pace.
Jeepers creepers. So
Yeah,
he's just-
sorry, 4:10.
So just the half miler, just about half mile. Now, very kudos to him in regards to conventional deadlift. And I was not expecting to see some hamstring touching calf in the squat. I'll be honest with you. I was expecting a very high low bar squat. I was expecting just below parallel maybe, which obviously is still impressive, but the fact that he is getting pretty deep in those squats is very, very impressive. It adds to the endeavor. And within the same hour, obviously, is very, very impressive also.
He's burying that squat.
Yeah.
One thing I will say though is 300-pound bench press is too close to a 400-pound squat.
Yes.
They're too close.
Here we have everyone's favorite quadzilla, Robert Forstmann, who is squatting 200 kilos for 15 reps in essentially a touch and go style. Now, Robert is a cyclist, professional cyclist for Germany. He is won some international medals. People kind of gripe about him being so strong and that he should stop being so big and strong and do more cycling or something like that. You see it frequently, but that aside, whatever your thoughts on that is, this 200 for 15 is incredibly impressive, especially the speed and the rate he's moving through the reps. He's just plowing through them.
Yeah, I think if you were to get the squat Avengers together for people to do like the most volume at 200 kilos or most volume at 220, particularly if you were to do non-powerlifting athletes under 100 kilos body weight, Forstmann would have to be on that list. I think Lee Sang would be on that list. I think Robert would be on that list. But it will be, that's the squat competition we need to see.
Lots of repetitions.
Yeah, lots of repetitions from guys who are jacked.
So his technique is very, very consistent. The first to the 15 rep looks very, very similar to each other and incredibly impressive. Elbows aren't moving, no change in back angle. He is really demonstrating his prowess at squatting. Now here we have Soichi Hashimoto, who is a Japanese judoka, and he is doing some of the most dire hill sprints or stair sprints, very high incline, and the distance has to be 200 or 300 meters, and he is just gunning it up those steps. Most people couldn't finish that because it's not even that you'd be too sore. You would just run out of capacity. You would have no more option just to start walking.
He's still trucking up the top there.
Yeah.
Like he's not slowly jogging up the top. You showed this video to me earlier and I nearly got sick just watching it.
He's at the point where it's so far and it's so high is that it's not even that it hurts. It's just that you just can't do it anymore. Your legs just get to the point where you just stop moving. You can't even go fast. Like it's so intense. It's so hard that you can't even hurt yourself because it's so tough. You just run out of the capacity to go fast.
I feel like he hits that third kind of lantern thing. And between that third lantern and the sixth lantern, he's in the most intense pain possible. And then everything after that is just gone. It's just screaming in your brain. You don't feel anything. As you said, your legs are numb. But I think there's between 30% and 50% of that length, he is in the most intense pain you've ever felt.
I'd love to know how many reps he did this or how many sets he did it running up to here. What a cool scenic place to be doing your stair sprints.
Yeah, I feel like there's like demons around you in the woods and they're talking to you as you're doing it.
Me personally, I would probably not make it to the top. Here we've got Alvin. So Alvin is the strict presser on the internet. He's one of the strictest strict pressers. He's pressing 161 kilos for a set of 5 here. And Alvin has done some monster presses. And he's just, it's just, what I love about Alvin's press is that even though, he's not racky like a weightlifter, they are super strict. There's no leg drive. He pauses between each rep. He doesn't do the double dip part where you bring it down and kind of turn into a push press. And he's not turning it into an incline bench press. He is just strict pressing 160 kilos for reps here. Just honest pressing.
These are stellar presses. Like particularly between the first and second rep here, you'll see he brings it down. There's a bit of a bounce up and he stops and he kind of pauses for a small bit longer in that one. Like he is very, very focused on how strict those reps are going to be. I feel like there's a bit of a tendency as well in the super heavy strict press world at the moment to get a bit of hip action in there, They're not dipping and driving with their knees. They're not bringing their heels off the floor. There's a little bit of hip drive, but we don't see any of that in Alvin's. Insanely impressive.
Now, sticking with big presses, we've got Berserker, who's been on the show before. and he is training with the Australian strength coach. Now, he benched 265 kilos with a pause, so this is Vasa, and he's done some crazy pressing, but I don't think we've ever seen as heavy as 265 pause on the bench press from him before. A very, very, very clean rep.
Yeah, this is bloody gorgeous. If you're bench pressing maximal weights like that in a, what I'm going to call a non-competition environment here, which I feel this is. I feel like this is a bit of an exhibition or maybe a seminar or something that's going on and he maxes his bench out. This is how you should be doing it. Like very, very strict. Zero question marks. There's no question marks about how legit this weight is or anything like that. Everybody can see this from the far side of that room that this is definitely a legit bench press.
So someone goes, can someone tell me what the function is of arching the back these days? I'm out of the industry these days, but we never used to do this. I couldn't do it anyway because I had spinal injuries. Like that's, yeah.
Nobody cares.
That's why you didn't bench press 265. Mother of God, the comments.
Mother of God.
Mother of God. Here we've got a very famous arm wrestler, Levin Sanginahashvili. He is an absolute monster. And here he is just benching 260 kilos, completely raw, no wrist wraps, no belts, no elbow sleeves, nothing.
No, full raw dogging it.
Just 260 touch and go.
I'm not ashamed to say it, Owen, but arm wrestling makes no sense to me.
How do you mean?
They're just massive fellas, humongous arms. Some of them only have one arm that's massive and the other one's small. But it's so popular.
It has gotten insanely popular.
Where did it come from?
I suppose it's very simple. It makes perfect sense. Like there's no intricacies in terms of like you win the arm wrestle, you didn't win the arm wrestle.
Arm wrestling was something you'd do with your uncles on Christmas Day at the dinner table, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought it would reach internet stardom like it has.
Yeah, should be interesting without steroids. So interesting. Come on now.
Who comments that? Like, why would you comment that?
260 touch and go, very, very impressive.
Yeah.
I'd have to imagine it's very useful for arm wrestling.
Oh my God, yeah.
So here we've got Esperanza. She's squatting 195 kilos. She is 18 years old, and this set of 430 pounds for a single is super, super impressive. Crazy weight to be moving.
It's such a good squat as well. It is that kind of junction we always talk about between low bar back squat with high bar positions, nice upright torso, no crazy kind of hip drive back, a lot of quad engagement and a lot of forward knee travel. Technically, this squat is very, very nice. If you're trying to get a good competition style powerlifting squat, I would highly recommend something along these lines. Very nice balance between that posterior and anterior chain. We've covered this ad nauseum for the last couple of months. I feel since Christmas we've been talking about how quickly the female side of strength sports is progressing, what a kind of major step forward it's taking, and this is yet another example of this, an absolutely monstrous squat.
Yeah, at the age of 18, so she said she's a 76 kilo lifter. Like, really can't think of anyone else other than maybe Olivia Reeves, who was this kind of strength as a teenager. A few other maybe international female weightlifters, but I can't think of any other powerlifters who might have been this strong at this age. So the future is bright for that strength sports and the female side for powerlifting. Next, we have got he's called the Pump House MB, but his name is Wayne Van Nostrand, and he is benching 272.5 kilos at 54 years old. Just got a little elbow cuffs on. I don't really think they add that much to the bench press. They're certainly not adding 100 kilos or so.
No.
A pause rep as well at 54. It's just ludicrous in his tongs or his sandals, flip-flops.
Yeah, this is legitimately crazy strength. You know, people look and they see kind of older athletes, like masters class athletes, and they say, oh, that's so strong for a masters athlete. In this case, this is just so strong all the way around. 600 pounds pause bench press. That number will never not be insanely impressive.
But if we just looked at two other athletes who are essentially prime athletes who are training a lot and kind of in their prime ages for strength, they were doing 265 pause, 260 touch and go, and here we have 272.5 pause. And, you know, just in your 50s to be pressing anything even close to this. Pressing it at any age is ridiculously impressive. It's just stupidly impressive. But to be 54 and pressing this is almost nonsensical. Now, next we've got Lya. Lya Powerlifting is a French powerlifter, and she went for an AMRAP at 220 kilos conventional. She's a 66 kilo lifter. She's weighing 66 in this video, and she got 4 reps at it. Mind blowing.
Look, for everybody watching this at home, that deadlift for anybody would be incredibly impressive, but particularly for anybody at 66 kilo body weight would be insanely impressive. And then obviously on the female side of things, it makes it even more impressive again. I think Lya's deadlift form is absolutely kind of textbook. It's definitely, in terms of that narrow stance conventional style that's so popular in the IPF at the moment, she is one of the best practitioners out there. The other thing about Lya's lifting is that Lya has incredibly long legs, particularly incredibly long femurs in comparison to her tibia. So she's not very well built for lifting. Like it's more difficult for her than it would be for somebody with shorter legs. So it's definitely gives hope to everybody that you can be insanely strong. It doesn't matter what your leverages are. It doesn't matter what your relative morphology is. You can train. The more you train, the better you're going to get. So don't ever hold yourself back by thinking along those lines. Lya, if you go and look at her profile, has a very unique style of squatting, a very kind of different style of squatting, a squat style that we've kind of referred to as the French style previously on the news show, but her deadlift is great.
Now, here we've got Andrew Kyle Fang doing 250 kilos or 550 pounds for a set of 7. So he went for an AMRAP. Kyle seems to have quite a solid spread between his reps and his top singles. I'm actually not quite sure what Andrew's 1RM is, and I was looking at his page, but I couldn't see it unless I missed it very obviously. And this 250 for 7, he's quads high bar, squats as low as possible. It's very unusual to see a powerlifter squat essentially full depth high bar and be a competitive powerlifter. You know, it's trying to actually compete in powerlifting and do the best possible, which obviously we love. Big fans of that. Mm-hmm. Big love for that.
All about it.
All about that. But this 250 for 7, super impressive. Great speed. So upright in the torso. All the reps look very, very similar in terms of the positions. A little bit of slowdown by the last rep. But I love this set of squats.
Yeah, I really like Andrew's squats, full stop. We've talked about it a number of times on the news show here, but that depth and how upright he is just bloody gorgeous.
Yeah, he said he was hoping for 8 reps, but after 6, after rep 5, he said he felt so down. He just shifted his focus on horsing the rest of my set. His training's been very rinse and repeat lately, so I've been in the habit of posting more information reels over the usual training logs. And that's kind of what most training is just rinse, repeat, do more, do similar, and get the job done and be specific with what you need to do. It doesn't have to be super complex, but there is a minimum level of complexity, as we've been talking about recently. Now, finish off the show with, I think this is the first Scottish powerlifter we might have had on the show. This is Annie Nelson, and she's squatting 205 kilos for a double. Again, just really emphasizing how far and how impressive female weightlifting and female powerlifting is coming along. So this was her new 1RM, and she decided to double it, that's always a great sign for your actual 1RM.
That's an Owen Murphy-esque thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
You love doing that, like.
Well, I did it with 200 the first time.
The crazy thing on this, when you look at the first rep here, is how fast she stands up.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That looks like 80%. Obviously, that kind of initial turnaround is difficult, but that opening of the hips at the very top is absolutely absurdly fast. It makes me feel like she'd have a massive kind of deadlift from 6 inches off the floor. Mm-hmm. Like if you set the bar just at her knees, I feel like she could probably pull 300 kilos.
I just wanted to make an unusual comment here, but we always comment on gyms, but it's really nice to see a gym that's just not all black. I know
that's a good point.
The recent trend for gyms has just been like rave lights, neon lights, smoke, fire,
paint
flames.
Paint the ceiling black, paint the walls black,
paint the floor
mats on the floor.
Squat racks are black.
Yeah.
You actually can't see where anything is. You just have to hope you find an empty squat rack. But I feel like that just is a nicely normal colour gym, kind of grey on the wall.
That's a good point.
It doesn't have to be too cool, guys.
A lot of the time in the heavy powerlifting gyms now, you only find your way around because there's enough of a dusting of chalk to see the outlines of things.
Oh, but sometimes the neon lights,
Yes.
the rave lights do help you move along. So thanks for watching today's news show. As always, greatly appreciate everyone who sends in the news show DMs. The tagging system, for whatever reason, I'm not really sure, it's just completely broken on Instagram, so we don't get any of the taggings. We only get the DMs you sent into the news show. Look through every single one of those. Today's was actually recorded 3 days ahead of time, so it was just 4 days after last news show, and it took still well over an hour to go through all of them, and I make sure I look at everything. And so thank you for everyone who sends those in. Look at every single one of them. We're really appreciative of that. And the new show obviously wouldn't be what it is without people's submission. And we're coming into, I think, nearly 2 full years, maybe somewhere around summer. I need to find out the exact date and how many new shows we've done, and we're very, very grateful for that. Don't forget though that nearly a quarter of the year is gone, and you still haven't downloaded the Sika Strength app and ran, for example, the bench press program. Loads of people are running the pressing program. Part 2 of the pressing program will be coming out very, very shortly. This will be a little bit longer and a lot more specific to the pressing. The bench program won't be a part 2 because the bench press program just works incredibly well. You just have to keep benching and keep running it. We've had people literally go from like 120 to 160 over the course of, I think that was 3 or 4 runs, where they just ran it, took a little break, ran it again, and keep at it. And there's lots more great programs. Working on something very big for athletes for the app. And there's going to be a low bar squat program coming. There's going to be a front squat program coming, because we just can't keep letting people do 10s on the front squats, because it's just not fair. Because lots of people run the RTA squat program for a front squat. So we will get you a front squat program on the app.
The final thing as well, just to make you aware, is you might have seen some other people who are running the program. Their conditioning's getting a little bit better. Maybe they're looking a bit more trim. Maybe they're a little bit less out of breath when they walk up the stairs. And that's probably because they're running one of those additional conditioning blocks. So it is worth taking a look at. Maybe you don't want to admit it straight away, but what you could do is you could just have a little look at the conditioning program, and then maybe next week you could do some conditioning.
Thanks for watching, guys.